What's up guys, welcome to my Windwalker Monk DPS guide for Legion patch 7.2. Now in this guide I'm going to go over your spells and abilities, your talents, your artifact traits and relic choices, your stat priority, and then your DPS rotations, if you will, for single target and AoE, as well as demonstrations of each, and then just some macros or add-ons that I use that you might find useful. Now, for easy browsing, I have included some timestamps in the description below, so if you wish to skip to a specific section, feel free to click on one of those. Now I'm going to begin by going over your alternative resources, as well as your spells and abilities, and as a Windwalker Monk you've got two extra resources. You've got energy, which starts at full, and you spend it on an ability, and then it regenerates slowly over time. Your other resource is called chi, and this has a maximum of 5, so you can have 5 chi at any given time, and some abilities will generate it, and others will spend it. If you try to generate more than 5 chi, it just gets wasted. Now the first spell I want to go over is called Tiger Palm. This is a 50 energy ability, so it costs 50 energy, and it generates 2 chi for you. It does a little bit of damage in melee range, looks like this, and has the chance to proc a free Blackout Kick. Now Blackout Kick is a no cooldown ability that costs 1 chi, and it just does a little bit of damage, like so. The next ability I want to talk about is Rising Sun Kick. This costs 2 chi, does a lot more damage, and has a short cooldown reduced by haste, and also applies a debuff that makes the target take less healing for the duration. Not super useful in PvE, but it is there. Next up is Fist of Fury. This ability costs 3 chi, it's channeled, got a pretty long cooldown reduced by haste, and does a bunch of damage and hits everything in front of you. Now you can move while using it, as you'll see here, so Fist of Fury, you start channeling, you can move, and it will keep hitting stuff and cleaves things in front of you. Then we've got your artifact ability, Strike of the Windlord. This costs 2 chi and has a 40-second cooldown that can't be reduced by haste, and it just cleaves everything in front of you and slows movement speed for everything hits for 6 seconds. So it looks something like this, and it does hit in 2 waves, as you'll see, and just does a bunch of damage and slows stuff. We also have Spinning Crane Kick, which costs 3 chi, and this makes you spin around and you can move while spinning, and it just does damage to enemies. Now, every time you use a Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, or Rising Sun Kick on an enemy, you'll see it applies a debuff called Mark of the Crane, and for each target that's been hit by one of these abilities in the past 15 seconds, you increase the damage of your Spinning Crane Kicks for that duration. So, say if I hit 4 targets here, you'll see I have 4 Mark of the Crane stacks, and so my Spinning Crane Kick will be doing 200% more damage. And it looks like that when you actually use it. We also have Crackling Jade Lightning, which is a 20 energy ability, and then it channels like so. Does a little bit of damage, and each tick takes 20 energy. And then we've got our DPS cooldowns. Now, we have 2 main ones. The first is called Touch of Death. It's a 2-minute cooldown. Use it on an enemy, applies a debuff, and when that debuff expires, it does half of your maximum health as damage to that enemy. So you apply it like so, and you'll see it doesn't do anything while the debuff is active, but once it goes away, it does half of your max health or so, like that. The other cooldown is called Storm, Earth, and Fire. This is a 1.5 minute cooldown baseline. Eventually your weapon will make it a bit lower, and you split yourself into 3 spirits, and you do more damage overall during this period. Now, if you cast the spell again while it's active, you can focus the 3 targets on the target of your choosing. If you don't, though, they'll just kind of go off and hit whatever's in combat, and they will replicate all of your abilities, so the spirits will do whatever you do. Now, in terms of defensive cooldowns, we have one, and it's called Touch of Karma. This is a 1.5 minute cooldown, and you apply a debuff on a target. It looks something like this. And basically all damage you take during this period is transferred to this target instead. Now, it does have a limit, so if you go over the limit, you will lose Touch of Karma, it will break. But this is both kind of a defensive and offensive cooldown depending on how you want to use it. For utility, we do a few things. We've got Spearhand Strike, which is our melee interrupt, pretty standard stuff, 15-second cooldown. We have Paralysis, which is also a 15-second cooldown. This is a crowd control ability. You incapacitate the target for a minute, and any damage it takes will cancel the effect. Now, one thing that's not listed on the tooltip is it will remove all damage over time effects on the target. You can reapply them after, but just note that you can remove people's dots if you do apply paralysis to a target, so do be careful about that. We also have a slow called Disable. Costs 15 energy. Just walk up to something and hit it. And it slows them. And if you use it again, then you can root the target. So if they're already snared and you disable, they will be rooted. Finally, we do have a Detox, which is a Dispel. Costs 20 energy. Removes poison and disease effects. And then we have our movement abilities. And the first I want to talk about is Roll. And like it sounds, you just roll. So if you're standing still like this, you will roll in the direction you are facing. But you can also move, and you'll actually roll in the direction that you're moving. So you can kind of choose where you're going with that. And it does have a 20-second recharge with 2 charges. We also have Flying Serpent Kick. Now this shoots you forward, and you can either let it go the full distance and expire, or you can press it again in the middle of your kind of course of travel and stop yourself. And if you do that, then it will pulse a little like AoE damage and apply a slow to anything it hits. If you let it just go the full distance, then it won't do that little AoE. So it looks something like this on a 25-second cooldown. And if you stop yourself, you'll see you do a little AoE pulse. Now we also do have Transcendence and Transcendence Transfer. Transcendence puts down a port or a spirit on a 10-second cooldown. And then if you press Transcendence Transfer, you will teleport to that area and your spirit will switch with you. So you basically swap spots, you and your port there. And then you can choose whether to leave it there or eventually replace the Transcendence somewhere you want it. It's a very handy and cool movement ability. And finally, just a couple of passives I want to go over. Afterlife makes it so that when you kill something, you summon a healing sphere, so you can use this for self-heals, it's very useful. And if you happen to kill an enemy with Blackout Kick, you have a chance to summon a Chi Sphere, which if you walk over it will give you 1 Chi. That's not so useful in things like raids, but in like Mythic Plus or solo content, this can be quite useful, so do be aware that it is there. And then Windwalking just gives you and anyone within 10 yards of you that's friendly a 10% increased movement speed, so just nice little buff there, you get to walk a bit faster. Now, we're going to go over your talents next. And at level 15, I generally recommend Chi Wave for single target, and then Chi Burst for AoE. Now Chi Burst will technically do more for you at a single, even on single target, damage-wise, but people tend to like Chi Wave, or I find Chi Wave quite useful to add into your Mastery, which we'll get into in a bit, and Hit Combo as well, which is the talent down here. So this kind of will help add another ability to your arsenal. But if you want, you can go Chi Burst in single target as well, but definitely for AoE. Now level 30, these are all movement abilities, so totally up to you what you want. I would probably either recommend Tiger's Lust in like a raid setting, or if you just want personal movement, then Chi Torpedo. But completely up to your preference here. Level 45, Energizing Elixir all the way. It's a 1-minute cooldown, and it gives you the most Chi and energy out of all the talents here. But if you really can't be asked to use this, then go ahead and use Power Strikes. It's less effective overall, but it's completely passive, so it's kind of an alternative choice if you really can't use this or you really hate it for some reason. Now level 60, it's all CC stuff, so you kind of pick what you like. I generally would recommend Leg Sweep by default, but Ring of Peace can be really useful for zoning out if you need that, maybe like on Botanist, for example, with ads, or if you want to mess around with that in Mythic Plus and such. Level 75, these are all defensive talents. If you're not sure what to pick, I'd probably go with Healing Elixir. It's just a passive self-heal. It will proc when you drop below 35%, or you can use it to just heal yourself up. Diffuse Magic is really good if you need a cooldown for magic damage, so this is really a strong choice for that. And if there's a cooldown you need for physical damage, then Dampen Harm is your go-to. And yes, this does also affect magic damage, but if you're worried about the magic attack, then I would use Diffuse Magic instead. So they're all viable in different situations, so kind of pick what suits your needs and the situation. Level 90, most of the time I recommend Hit Combo. There are some new situations for Zuen, not really any right now currently that I can think of, but Hit Combo is really, really important, and it plays off of your Mastery as well, so it's just really good all around. And then Rushing Jade Wind can be used if you're doing like massive AoE and you're trying to apply a lot of Mark of the Crane stacks to several targets at once. So you can mess around with that, it's pretty fun, but in general Hit Combo will do you really well, even in situations where this is slightly better. So if you're not sure, go Hit Combo. Level 100, most of the time I'm going to recommend Whirling Dragon Punch for pretty much all situations. The only exception is if you have the wrist legendaries as well as the chest legendaries, so both of these together, then Serenity becomes better in pretty much every situation. So with those legendaries you can get Serenity, and then without, I generally recommend Whirling Dragon Punch. Now let's go over your artifact weapon, your pathing choices and your relics. You're going to start here at Strike of the Windlord, and you're going to go around to the left. I do recommend you go all the way to the left here. Keep going, skip this golden trait, so keep going around all the way until you grab Transfer the Power. Now at this point, go ahead and grab your Tornado Kicks, first golden trait, which makes Rising Sun Kick hit twice, but for 25% extra damage, so basically buffs your Rising Sun Kick. And then grab Tiger Claws up here, then Crosswinds, your second golden trait, which basically makes your Fist of Fury do more damage. And then you can go and grab your third golden trait, Gale Burst, over here, and this does make it so that when Touch of Death is active, all the damage you do while the debuff is on the target actually boosts the damage of Touch of Death. So it kind of gives you incentive to do lots of damage during that cooldown, which is pretty cool. And then after that, go ahead and grab Power of 1,000 Cranes, Strength of Zuen, and then finish up with Good Karma and Healing Winds. Now at this point, you'll be at 34, you get your 35th point over here at Windborne Blows, and then you'll do your quest on Unbroken Shore, open up the new traits and all that, and then I recommend you get the new stuff first. So grab these 4 new traits, including your new golden trait, Thunder Fist, which just buffs your Strike of the Windlord, and when you do use it, for every target you hit, you get a stack of a buff, and it consumes one of those stacks every time you melee to do a little bit of extra damage. After that, I recommend Fist of the Wind for more Fist of Fury damage. It's really important. And then there can be some variation at this point, depending on what you want to focus on. But I will recommend grabbing Rising Winds after that, and then Power of 1,000 Cranes. And then whether you want to focus on single target AoE is kind of up to you at this point. So for more AoE, Inner Peace is pretty good, and then Tiger Claws for single target, and then Strength as a Win also for single target, but this is a pretty small upgrade overall. And then grab the other 3 traits, your Healing Winds, your Death Art, and your Light on your feet, however you want. None of these really affect your DPS, but maybe Healing Winds for the heal effect of your Transcendence, if that's relevant to you. Now in terms of relic choices, of course item level is generally going to be king. The higher the item level, the more your weapon goes up, and thus the more damage you do. A couple exceptions. For single target, Fists of the Wind and Rising Winds are both very, very strong, and are probably equivalent to about 20 item levels, or give or take a few. And so they're, you consider that when picking those over something like Death Art, Light on your feet, or Healing Winds that have no relevance to your damage. Now for single target, Fists of the Wind, your number 1. Then Rising Winds would be your second choice here. Note that with the 2-piece from Nighthold, this is technically slightly better than Fist of the Wind for single, but given that we're moving into Tomb fairly soon, or if you just don't have it, you know, it's a pretty slight difference. So generally consider Fist of the Wind best, then Rising Wind second, and then Inner Peace, then Tiger Claws, and then Strength of Zuen. Now for AoE, it's a little bit different. Fist of Fury is extremely strong, so this is by far your best. Then Inner Peace becomes really good. And then after that, Rising Winds is still really strong. Then Spinning Crane Kick, and then Tiger Claws, and then Strength of Zuen. So a little bit different if you want to focus on AoE, but if you can, just grab Fist of Fury relics. Those are your best, just for all situations, really. Now in terms of stat priority, I do recommend, of course, that you do simulate your character or find your own personalized stat weights rather than going for like a generic setup. But if you just want that general, generic, broad kind of priority, it's going to be a little bit different for single target and AoE. And for single target, you're going to want Mastery. Actually, in both, Mastery is really good. And what this does is it makes your abilities do more damage if they're not repeated from they're not the same ability that you just used. So as long as you don't cast the same ability twice in a row, then you benefit from Mastery. And we'll get into this more in the rotation section, but you should never repeat abilities, so you'll always have this extra damage boost, which is why it's so strong. Now, for single target, after Mastery comes Crit, and then Versatility, and then Haste. And for AoE, Mastery is still really, really strong, and thus your top stat in general. But then Haste is your next stat for AoE because it helps your energy regen, which helps you do more Spinning Crane Kicks and so on. And then Crit, and then Versatility. Again, I do really want to emphasize you should simulate your character, you should get your own personalized stat weights, because these things do play off each other, and you don't want to just stack one stat completely, because it will actually not be ideal. But those are some general stat weights in case you just want to get an idea of what you should be looking for. Now I'm going to go over your DPS rotation, if you want to call it that, and I'm going to start with a single target one. And so the concept is, you only have one ability that generates chi, that's Tiger Palm, and it does generate 2 for you. So you're using this to generate chi, and then you want to spend that chi on all these various spenders. Now in terms of which ones to spend them on, the order of priority goes something like this for single target. Fist of Fury is your number 1, followed by Strike of the Windlord, followed by Whirling Dragon Punch, which even though is not technically a chi spender, kind of falls into this cooldown rotation if you will. Then a Rising Sun Kick, then Chi Wave or Chi Burst if you took that, and then a Blackout Kick, and then Tiger Palm. Now, it doesn't work out where you can just spend all these abilities, like you spam Tiger Palm and then spend all these. You want to mix it up. Remember that your Mastery and Hit Combo talent, which I do recommend, both benefit from you not repeating the same ability twice in a row. So in practice, it looks more like, you know, Tiger Palm, maybe spend it on like a Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm again, that gives you 3, and then you can like Fist of Fury, and so on and so forth. So you kind of weave in Tiger Palms as well as other abilities to make sure that you're never repeating the same ability twice, while still trying to use all of these abilities on cooldown in that order of priority that I just listed. In addition, make sure you never overcap your chi. So if you're at 4 or 5 chi, do not Tiger Palm because you're going to be wasting chi. And similarly, try not to sit at full energy for too long outside of like your big DPS cooldowns, in which you're spending all of these chi spenders, you're using all these abilities, and so you might find yourself back at full energy for a little while during those burst windows, but outside of that, try to keep it below full if possible. Now one small note, in order to use Whirling Dragon Punch, you do have to have both Fist of Fury and Rising Sun Kick on cooldown, so make sure you use these abilities first. Make sure you prepare enough chi or just enough globals so that when it's off cooldown, you are ready to use this and your other abilities are already, you know, have been used or about to be used. In terms of your DPS cooldowns, Touch of Death you want to use as much as possible. It's a 2-minute cooldown, so use it when you can. Try to line it up with other abilities that hit really hard, as well as Storm Within Fire if you can. But don't delay Storm Within Fire too much. So if it's like a few seconds, that's probably okay. But if it's like 30 seconds off, just go ahead and use your other cooldown. But you want to line stuff up with Touch of Death because Gale Burst, your golden trait over here, makes it so that when you do damage during the Touch of Death window, you actually get extra damage from your Touch of Death. So it just kind of synergizes well with hard-hitting abilities. Similarly, Storm Within Fire, again, you want to use it as much as possible on cooldown, as long as it lines up with some of your other hard-hitting abilities. It's like Strike of the Windlord, Fist of Fury, Touch of Death, Whirling Dragon Punch, and so on. Remember, there are 2 charges, so don't let this sit at 2 charges pretty much ever. So try to kind of rotate it through as you can. But again, don't be afraid to save 1 charge to line up with a bunch of your other abilities, maybe like Bloodlust Heroism, stuff like that. Now, to use Storm Within Fire effectively, you want to make sure you are pulling up your chi beforehand so that you don't spend as much time during the Storm Within Fire window using Tiger Palm. So the less you can use Tiger Palm during that, the better, because it allows you to do more hard-hitting abilities instead. That means go to 5 chi if you can, or close to as possible, or if you have Energizing Elixir available, just have like 2 chi so you can use 1 ability right away after Storm Within Fire, and then Energizing Elixir, and then use the rest of it. Now, speaking of Energizing Elixir, you do want to use this as much as possible. Do try to line it up with stuff like Storm Within Fire, for example. So do line it up if you can, but even outside of that, make sure that you have like 0 chi. Try to have an empty bar so that you're not wasting any of this generated chi. And if possible, be at like slightly lower energy. That's not as important though as the chi, but do try to use this as much as possible during the fight. Again, lining it up if there's something close to being used like Storm Within Fire. Now I'll go ahead and demonstrate for you guys to get a better idea of how it actually kind of flows. And I'll kind of tell you what's going on, what I'm thinking as I'm doing the rotation. And you can also follow along with the icons over here that'll be on the left side of the screen, showing you what I've just cast. Now as far as the opener goes, you're going to start with the pre-pot, of course. Chi Wave from a distance, maybe like 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds before the pull. Flying Serpent Kick in, and then make sure you stop yourself when you actually get to the boss or adds, so you don't fly past them. Then Tiger Palm, Touch of Death, Storm Within Fire, and then pop your Rising Sun Kick, Energizing Elixir, Fist of Fury, Strike of the Windlord, and then squeeze in Whirling Dragon Punch if you can. And if not, then Tiger Palm, Rising Sun Kick into Whirling Dragon Punch. You should be able to squeeze it in even with the 2-piece from Ninehold, but it is a bit tight, so you want to be spamming your Whirling Dragon Punch if possible. And then just kind of follow the rotation after that. So, we'll go ahead and start. We'll pretend to pre-pop. We'll Chi Wave, Flying Serpent Kick in, and then Tiger Palm and start the opener. So, Wave, Serpent Kick, Tiger Palm, Touch of Death, Storm Within Fire, Rising Sun Kick, Energizing Elixir into Fist of Fury, into Strike of the Windlord, into Whirling Dragon Punch, and then Tiger Palm so I can use Rising Sun Kick again. Now at this point, I have Chi Wave, so I'll use that to break up 2 Blackout Kicks. And I hear Rising Sun Kick is up, so I'll use that. Tiger Palm to generate Chi. And now here, I notice some stuff is coming up and I'm low on energy, so I'm actually going to wait a little. And then Tiger Palm into Fist of Fury. Tiger Palm again for Rising Sun Kick so I can use Whirling Dragon Punch as it's coming off. And then just kind of go like this. Now, you don't always have to use all your globals. You don't have to Tiger Palm all the time. Or spend your Chi immediately. Because like, for example, I noticed my Strike of the Windlord is coming up pretty soon. So maybe I want to build up some Chi before I get into this. Pop this cooldown. I'll Fist of Fury. And then Tiger Palm to Strike of the Windlord. Tiger Palm so I can use Whirling Dragon Punch after Rising Sun Kick. And so you can notice when your cooldowns are coming up. Notice I have Energizing Elixir now, so I'll go ahead and use that. And I wasted a little Chi there, which I shouldn't have done. I probably should have just waited, but I didn't want to waste too much energy. So a little sip there, but kind of like look at what's coming up, plan ahead if you can, and plan your moves accordingly. Again, using your cooldowns on cooldown as much as possible, other than to make sure that they line up with something else. In this case, I'm going to build up a little bit of Chi, as I notice we're getting pretty close to a cooldown period again. So I'll Rising Sun Kick because I now have enough energy here. Pop Storm Within Fire. Let me Fist of Fury. Strike of the Windlord. Tiger Palm into Rising Sun Kick into Whirling Dragon Punch. And you just kind of get a feel for it. Notice what's coming up. Get a feel for, should I Tiger Palm? Should I spend it on Blackout Kick or, Rising Sun Kick? Or should I wait? So, kind of get used to that and just kind of keep going through this flow. Now at this point, with your Touch of Death, maybe you could wait for Storm Within Fire, or maybe you think it's too long and you just want to use it right away, but at least have, Strike of the Windlord and Fist of Fury ready, which in this case I don't, so maybe I would just hold off and kind of wait to use Touch of Death again. Now the AoE DPS rotation is pretty similar to the single target one. You're still weaving in your Tiger Palms to generate Chi with your other abilities. You don't want to lose your mastery, you don't want to lose your hit combo. What changes mostly is the order of priority for your abilities, your big cooldowns, your spenders, and so on. Fist of Fury is still number 1, still very important. Then Whirling Dragon Punch becomes number 2. Then Strike of the Windlord. And then Rising Sun Kick just to enable Whirling Dragon Punch, but not for its own sake, because you don't really use it in multi-target. And then Spinning Crane Kick with many stacks, and we'll get into exactly how to use this. Then Chi Burst, or Chi Wave if you have that. Then Blackout Kick, and then Tiger Palm. Now, Spinning Crane Kick requires a little bit of management, so don't forget that you apply its Mark of the Crane debuff with Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, and Rising Sun Kick. And you want to apply that to as many unique targets as possible so that you buff your Spinning Crane Kick. So this means while you're in kind of that filler rotation where you're building with Tiger Palm and spending a little bit of Chi with Blackout Kick and stuff like that, just to break up hit combo and mastery. And even with Rising Sun Kick, if you're about to use Whirling Dragon Punch, keep switching targets. Keep reapplying the debuff and maintaining those stacks for your Spinning Crane Kick so that you do more damage when you do use this. Now, if you get to ridiculously high stacks, it can become like a higher priority than other abilities, but in general, that takes a lot of enemies. We're talking well over 10 a lot of the time, so don't think about that too much. If you're doing huge packs anyway, it's probably farm content for you, like really easy, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. In terms of using your cooldowns, it's kind of the same idea. Touch of Death as much as possible, Storm Within Fire as much as possible. Do try to line them up with other abilities. Same thing with Energizing Elixir, on cooldown as much as possible. Do not waste your Chi or energy if you can when you use that. And with Storm Within Fire, one small note, do not double tap it. Make sure you do let them go and hit different targets on AoE. If you double tap it, they'll focus on one target, but if you let them run free, they will apply Mark of the Crane stacks for you in AoE, which is really nice and helps you generate lots and lots of spinning crane kick stacks during that burst window. Also, you still want to try to pull as much chi as possible, but if you can't for some reason, it's not as bad, because again, using Tiger Palm and using Blackout Kick will put more stacks of spinning crane kick on, which helps. But it's still good if you have like Fist of Fury ready and, you know, Strike and all that, to be able to use those in quick succession, because they still do generally a lot more than spinning crane kick will. Now the opener is going to be the same, because it's probably a single target anyway. You don't really get AoE openers that often in most fights. Chi Wave, Flying Super Kick in, and then Tiger Palm, Touch of Death, and then cooldown your Storm Within Fire, Rising Sun Kick, Energizing, you know, all that stuff. Now, if there's already adds at the start, then you could just strike with the Windlord first instead, just because Rising Sun Kick won't be quite as important. But basically the same opener, and just kind of switch targets as you're doing it. So we'll pre-pop, Chi Wave, and then Flying Serpent Kick in. Tiger Palm, Touch of Death. You know, in this case, I'll go ahead and just do Strike of the Windlord first to pretend there's some AoE. I'll switch up, you know, hit Rising Sun Kick there, Whirling Dragon Punch, and now we're kind of in the filler rotation, so I'm switching targets to make sure I maintain my stacks, and then use Spinning Crane Kick when I can. And I'm not using Rising Sun Kick because it costs too much chi per just marking up stuff. Now, Fist of Fury is coming up, so I want to use this first. It's more important than Spinning Crane Kick. And then, you know, I have time for Spinning Crane Kick now. I notice Whirling Dragon Punch is ready, so I'll have to use Rising Sun Kick, and then Whirling Dragon Punch. And then if you run out of energy at some point, you can use Chi Wave, Chi Burst, and such to kind of fill in. Like here, I'll Spinning Crane Kick. Now I have some cooldowns ready, so I go ahead and want to Fist of Fury first if I can, so I'll build up to that. Fists, and then Strike of the Windlord is ready as well, so to generate chi. And you just notice, like, as I'm building up my abilities, I'm marking targets with Mark of the Crane, using Blackout Kick, using Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, etc, etc. So that's kind of the name of the game here. Just build up lots of stacks, Energizing Elixirs up so you can use that, and just Fist of Fury, hit a bunch of stuff, and you just kind of keep doing this over and over, and AoE as much as you can, and just make sure you're marking up targets with the appropriate abilities. And that's pretty much just kind of how you go. And you can, of course, use Storm Within Fire if you wanted at any given point here. If you wanted, you have more ad spawn, you want to build up more stacks, you just want it to burst down some more. And it just keeps going, like so. Now, in terms of macros and add-ons, I don't really use any macros for Windwalker right now. But I do use some add-ons, the most notably Weak Ore, as you probably saw during the demonstration. And I use this mostly to track stacks, cooldowns, buff uptime and things like that. Stacks of my Mark of the Crane debuff, because those don't always show up. It's not something that shows up like in your buff UI, so it's pretty important to track that and stuff like that. You can do a lot of cool stuff with it, and I use it fairly simply. I think a lot of these I just found online, like these things that are flashing for bosses and things. So it's very, very useful add-on, very powerful. The icon that was flashing in the middle of my screen is from a Doom Cooldown Pulse. Don't really recommend it. It does just what it sounds like. It just flashes the icon in the middle of the screen when something is off of cooldown. It's not always accurate though, especially with anything that affects cooldowns like Serenity, for example. If you use that, or in Nighthold like Alisand or Gul'dan, it can screw up pretty badly. So it's not always accurate, so I don't really recommend it. Plus you can do the exact same effect in Weak Ores, but it is a Fire and Forget add-on. You just download it, and I haven't touched the settings once, so kind of easy to use. And if you don't have Weak Ore set up or something, then it can be nice on a new tune, for example. Now for my action bars, I do use Bartender 4, and you can move the bars around as you like. You can change key bindings on any button that you like, and you can make that both either account wide, or you can just do it per tune. And you can also mess around with different bars. Your extra action bar, you can mess around with how many buttons they have per bar, what rows, how many rows, all sorts of settings you can mess around with. For damage meters, I am using details now. It does take a little bit of setup, so do be aware of that. But I think it's worth it. I think it's got a lot of customizability. and is really, really nice. Now, Recount and Scatter are also excellent add-ons, so nothing wrong with those, but I do like this one personally. For Exorcist raid tools, this is another one I use. You probably didn't see it too much in this video, but I use it to track things like raid cooldowns, and you can set up the order that you like. Battle reses, you can inspect the raid, like gear, enchants, all that stuff. You can write notes, check food flask runes, all that stuff. And you can do a lot of cool things like hoop pools. Similarly, I have Aura 3, which has some of the same functions. I use this one mostly for battle res, because I like the format of it a bit better. There's also alerts, things like crowd control, breaking, misdirects, taunts, interrupts, misinterrupts, combat reses, so on. Stuff like when people put down feasts, portals, you know, codexes, etc., etc. So it can be very, very useful. And you can do consumable checks as well, food flask runes, and you can also have a cooldown tracker if you like, as well as setting kind of guild repairs, auto setting loot method, which you can also do in Exorcist, and just when they ready check, it'll show like who has food and flask and so on. It's kind of a nifty add-on that I have used for a while there. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you did like it, feel free to hit it with a like. If you want to know when I post new content or more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel so you do know when those come out. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the comments section below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. You can also check out my stream at twitch.tv and ask me questions there and hang out if you like. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers.